Yo, what is going on, my fellow weebs? Chrono here, and welcome back to the channel. So today is the long-awaited Legendios video. I know, I was supposed to do this a long time ago, but life happens. But before we jump into that video here, as always, my name is Chrono. I cover PSO2 content. Would much appreciate subscribe as we work our way towards that long-standing stretch goal of 10,000 subscribers. If you aren't subbed, it would mean a whole lot if you press that button. Helps out a ton. Either way, let's go ahead and get started. All right, so Legendios. Now, I will say, if you need like a quick TLDR, this is meant to be the next support weapon. Essentially, they're kind of separating out support style weapons similar to that of TWAV, from the more damage focused weapons. Support focused weapons are going to be legendary weapons or Legendios weapons. I don't know exactly how they're going to go about this. They're called Legendios this time around. They're legendary series weapons, and they're going to be separated. So if you're looking for something more supporty, this is kind of your jam here. I'm just going to go over kind of what it does, and then we're going to talk about how strong it actually is, if it's something that you're looking forward towards upgrading, and then what I recommend moving forward. There'll be a TLDR, hopefully it will be timestamped in the video description as well, so you guys will be able to jump to wherever you need to as far as the chapters are concerned. So Legendios potential, all we care about is potential level 6. I don't know why anyone would look at any other level potentials, because you should be going all the way to 6 if you are going for a weapon like this in the first place. So it is 47% potency, which is pretty high. All things considered, I believe our current weapon is 46%. Don't quote me on that. With weapons sheathed, obtain up to 2 stocks after some time. Use all stocks when attacking for an extra attack. Generate support area for 30 seconds. Extra attack potency and support area range depends on number of stocks. These effects occur for 30 seconds for you and your party. Damage resistance plus 20%. You also get increased PB generation plus 20%, and then PB auto accumulation plus 50%. Starts 10 seconds after equipped. This is very important. This is after equipped, 10 seconds after equipped. So you can't just equip this really quickly, use the effect, and then swap it off. It only generates 10 seconds after equipped. And then it shows, of course, what all of these look like. So you can see all the different weapons and things of that sort. It is worth noting, from what I understand of the Talus currently, I believe it's when it's in its bullet mode. This, for some reason, it counts as it being sheathed. So like you get the effect over and over again. It's kind of like permanent is what I'm told. I'm not 100% sure on that, so don't quote me on that either. Hopefully we'll be able to find an example of it. I'll be able to post it in the video description. I think it's been shown on Twitter. I think someone in my Discord also showed it off too. So in case you're in Discord, you might have seen it there too. But basically, this is kind of like weirdly sort of bugged for Talus, from my understanding. But other than that, it's just, it works as is. The idea behind it is meant to be a support weapon that gives an extra field whenever it generates that field or whatever after you start attacking the enemy. Okay, I got some extra context from my chat about the whole Talus situation. Essentially, it counts the stocks as you're supposed to while it's on your back. However, if you have the weapon action for the Talus out, if you don't know how the weapon action for Talus works, it basically creates like a small turret that attacks. That still counts as an attack that spends those stocks. So like, it kind of loses some agency over when you spend the stocks, but it also still continues to build them as it's on your back. So it kind of works as intended. It's just a little finicky. Anything that kind of does damage on the field technically is going to spend those stocks. So things like leave damage puddles. So for example, likely Waker will probably have an issue with this too. And the TAC for soaring blades also does damage while the weapon is on your back too, since you can leave that damage puddle on the ground. So just keep that in mind. That is something that could affect your use behind the weapon itself. But from what I understand, it's something that's super impactful, whether it be positive or negative. It just loses a tiny bit of agency over how you're proccing it, essentially. So it is one of those situations where you're able to essentially probably get this every once in a while, but it's not gonna be something that's continuously going on. So it is what it is. All right, fair warning, you're about to get flashbanged. My Twitch chat did not get a fair warning in this situation, but you guys are about to get flashbanged because this is in white mode, and I've tried pushing this in a dark mode. It never turns out well. So you've been warned. 3, 2, 1. So we're over on the NGS damage calculator made by our good friend of the community, Cakewalk, who's actually, updated this recently. It hasn't been updated for the newest augment that came out today, but it really doesn't make too much of an impact. It's just the ability to kind of work through Abandac a bit easier. But either way, we're going to go over the comparison of the weapon currently versus the Legendios weapons and how strong they actually are. So if you haven't used this, I've used this plenty of times on the channel. I have an entire video dedicated to how to use this. You can always check that out, figure out how to set it up for yourself, and you can see how powerful it is on your end. Currently, we're using best in slot augments just because it's so easy to build for best in slot these days. We also include Abandac as well. I have the best in slot Abandac set up there too. So 20 stacks of different augments for Abandac on top of that. So if that's something that you go for, that also is there available, but it is what it is. Your mileage may vary. Keep in mind that because of this potential does not affect any form of crit rate. Because of that, you don't need to look at Slayer separately because they're not affected separately. If this affected crit rate or crit damage, Slayer would have a little bit of different scaling, but because it doesn't, Slayer is kind of in the same boat as far as the damage differences. So just keep that in mind as far as we're looking at that. If you're playing Slayer, I know usually we use Slayer separately if that is one of the situations. Currently, it is not. All right, so we're looking at Akroselio, looking at an attack 5 weapon, because realistically speaking, you can push yourself up to Fixa 5s pretty reasonably these days. So we're looking at an attack 5 weapon just because of that. If you're looking to replace Akroselio, it's probably going to be at 5. I mean, at the bare minimum, you should be at Fixa 3. Fixa 3 is free. I would argue Fixa 4 is free because Fixa 3s are being sold right now in that one treasure shop for 30K a piece. So we're just going to put it at 5 because, again, this is very, very attainable. And this is the current setup we're going with at the moment. This is just BIS, more or less, for damage in the game currently. So it is what it is. All right. Gonna just jump to it. Though you guys aren't stuck waiting for a long period of time. I don't make this video too crazy long anyway, and I got a lot of other things to do. So we're looking at this from the Bouncer Slayer perspective. Of course, with our add-on skills added in, we can see our baseline right now is right here at a fixed attack 5. Curious about it comparatively to the free weapon they hand you, the current best in slot is 41% stronger. It's a pretty massive amount, to be perfectly honest. So it is what it is. A Tricelio is about 5% behind an Akroselio with the same augment at fixed attack 5. If we go down to a Legendios, keep that in mind. Legendios solo with no buff applied to you. Now keep in mind this is with no buff, because this is a situation where you could have the buff going and you can have situations where the buff isn't going. You can see that we're behind by about 8% at Fixa 0. But let's be perfectly honest, no one should be at Fixa 0. That should never be a thing. They quite literally give you capsules to push yourself to Fixa 1. So let's look at this respectively at about Fixa 1. So at 8 players, no buff, 1.5% overall is what you're looking at. So as you can see, the damage differences aren't massively different, because realistically speaking, the only difference you're looking at is actually the base damage applied. The base damage isn't a whole lot. It's a tad bit higher. You have the potential being like 1% higher. So realistically speaking, it's not a weapon that you really need to chase after to get the most amount of damage. Now, realistically, it is still more damage. So if more damage is what you're going after and you're playing any class that is going to provide buffs to people around them, so I would argue things like Tector, maybe even Force to some extent, something like a Ranger, you may want to have someone with that buff to go along with you. So realistically speaking, you're always going to have the buff. At the end of the day, it's not by a whole lot. It's barely even 1%. So keep in mind, it is better. But if you look at those prices, at what cost? And to be perfectly honest, I wouldn't even fully believe these numbers consistently, because I mean, if you look at the potential, it's kind of difficult to gauge how much more more damage you're really getting, right? You have to keep that in mind, right? How much more damage you're getting is going to be based on how well the buff is being utilized, how often it's being utilized, and how well you can stack it up. So at the end of the day, what you're really looking at is the Legendios with the extra 1% potency, because your Akroselio is 1% potency behind. So you're looking at Legendios versus Akroselio, but you're looking at it with an extra 1% potency. And at the end of the day, damage-wise, not very high. So my recommendation is, if you're someone who absolutely pushes the top tippy top end of damage, and every single moment you're pushing the top end of damage to the best of your ability, then yes, I would say Akroselio is a damage increase, technically speaking. However, if that's not your game, if you're looking for effective damage increases, I would not recommend an Akroselio, or I would not recommend a Legendios. I said Akroselio, I meant Legendios. I would not recommend a Legendios. Unless you just happen to have one and you plan to support your teammates, I would not recommend setting up a Legendios, because we are likely, very likely to see a new weapon series that's going to upgrade in about a month at the latest, maybe 2. And at that point, that weapon is going to be focused on you specifically and dealing as much damage as you can. So if you're playing classes that aren't really focused around support, let's say, for example, you're playing something like Braver or maybe a Bouncer. I mean, Bouncer does have some support, but it is what it is. Playing a Braver, you're playing a Slayer, you're playing something else that you're not really focused around support, you're really focused on dealing as much damage as you can, then that weapon is probably going to be worth more your time. That's pretty much it. That's all I've got to say in this video today. If you have any questions, feel free to toss in the comments below. Let me know if I missed anything on my end here. In case you're curious about this, like I said beforehand, I've got an entire video where I go over how to use this calculator. So I would highly, highly recommend that you pull it off of the video description, set it up yourself, take a look at it for on your end and see how much stronger it actually is for you. Bonus, we can take a look at Abandac, 3% stronger. Full Abandac, 3% stronger. And I know these percentages seem super low. Keep in mind, guys, everything in PSO2 is multiplicative. So yeah, while this is less than 1%, that can still mean a good chunk of damage overall. Is it going to be massive? No. But 2 to 3% is pretty big. 5% is huge, and any bigger than that is actually pretty massive. So just keep that in mind. Either way, I'm yapping. Like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe if you want to keep up with more. As always, thank you to the channel members. You guys are fantastic, and I appreciate every single one of you. And I will see you all in the next video. Take care, my friends. Peace out.